it is now time for Bryson's Best 10 going week 12. We will start at number 10, a team making their debut on Bryson's Best 10. At number 10, stand up, Houston Texans are the 10th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. A lot of it stems from the fact that they have probably the greatest rookie quarterback we've ever seen. And that's with respect to Dak Prescott. That's my guy. That's with respect to Ben Roethlisberger. That's with respect to Andrew Luck and Justin Herbert, who is spectacular as a rookie. What this kid is doing, given what he inherited, this isn't not to take a shot at Brock Purdy. Because I thought Brock Purdy in limited action, despite that, should have been Rookie of the Year a season ago. It's not like he inherited the San Francisco 49ers roster. This wasn't a situation where somebody traded up to get him. No. Houston just sucked last year. If not for a last-second Hail Mary against the Colts, they would have had the number one pick in the draft a season ago, or a draft ago. So what this kid is doing is top 10 in all these categories, throws of 20 more yards down the field, completion percentage, touchdown interception ratio. Now that did take a ding against the Arizona Cardinals because he did throw 3 interceptions. But Tank Dell has been a godsend, a third-round pick for him. Obviously, Dalton Schultz has played well, really good tight end for them. He's flourished along with him the way he did with Dak Prescott. For the record, this Texans defense is 8th in the NFL at stopping the run, so they're kind of finding their way. D'Amico Ryans is right in the smack dab in the middle of the Coach of the Year discussion for this team. And I'm not just putting in the top 10 relative to what our expectations were for them. Listen, they've won 3 straight. You know, they've beaten Pittsburgh. They've beaten Jacksonville. They have a huge game against Jacksonville this week for first place in the AFC South. What Houston's doing right now is spectacular, and they are right now the 10th best team in the National Football League, making their Bryson's Best 10 debut. At number 9, I want to speed through this one because I don't like it. Number 9, it's the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are the 9th best team in the NFL, and here is why. So yes, Browns fans, congratulations, you won your Super Bowl. You beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, an organization you've been chasing your entire existence in the Super Bowl era and will never catch. We know that, but that's we'll put that aside. Cleveland is unquestionably the best defense in the NFL, number 1 against the pass. Myles Garrett is having an awesome season, 13 sacks in 10 games. He's been getting to the quarterback consistently. He's like, I compared Myles Garrett to Reggie White, where Reggie White back in the day would make Pro Bowl offensive linemen look silly. That is what Myles Garrett does on a week-to-week basis. I think he's this generation's Reggie White. What this Browns secondary has done, Jim Schwartz, a great defensive coordinator. I've always been a big Kevin Stefanski guy. I think he's a really smart head coach in Cleveland. You consider what they lost. They lost Nick Chubb. They've had injuries at time their offense. David Njoku has a little bit of a bad case of the drops to a certain degree, but Amari Cooper's had a really good season, and they've been, the loss of Deshaun Watson, I said it when he went down, felt bad for the guy, but are they getting that big of a dip in production with DTR? Not really. So we'll see where the Browns go from here. They've signed Joe Flacco to their practice squad. Love their defense, like a lot of their offensive pieces, in particular their offensive line. Have major questions about quarterback. If they had Russell Wilson, I would consider them a fringe top 5 team in the NFL. They obviously do not. The Browns are the 9th best team in the National Football League. At number 8, they do not move a spot from last week. It is the Minnesota Vikings. Like, wait a second, Bryson. They're the 8th best team in the NFL. Here's why. Wait a second, Bryson. They lost to Denver. They turned the ball over multiple times. Joshua Dobbs had the fumble, which, in his defense, he was, the guy who hit him was suspended 4 games. They had the fumble by Alexander Madison in the red zone, into the third quarter. That was big, cost the Vikings points in the game that they lost by 1. Josh Dobbs threw a pick, but it was tipped. It was a Dak Prescott 2022 interception. Wasn't his fault. Tipped off somebody's hands. It was a bad break for Dobbs and for this Vikings offense. But again, starting with this defense, it's crazy to talk about the Vikings, all the pieces they have offensively, but defensively, they have been excellent going back to their 5-game winning streak. And even that game against the Broncos when Denver kept stalling in the red zone, which you could look at that as a skeptic and say, hey, Minnesota's giving up a lot of yards. Denver couldn't cash in. They finally did at the end. Russell to Cortland Sutton. But I like what this team's doing defensively. Brian Flores, who should be a head coach next year, as far as I'm concerned, I feel like it was done dirty in some of these coaching interviews. Dobbs is playing well. He'll bounce back. They play Chicago. They'll dominate Chicago. At least they should on Monday Night Football at home. Justin Jefferson will be back sooner rather than later. So for Minnesota, their offense is trending upwards. Their defense continues to trend upwards. I like Minnesota more than most. I'm not saying that I think they're a Super Bowl contender, but I don't think the Texans or the Browns are Super Bowl contenders either. So I've got the Vikings as the 8th best team in the National Football League. To number 7, I do think this team is a Super Bowl contender. At number 7, it is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Moving moving up a couple of spots from last week. They were number 9 after that dominating loss to the 49ers. Today, they are the 7th best team in the NFL, and here is why. Trevor Lawrence, 100 passer rating. Well over 100 passer rating against the Tennessee Titans. The Jacksonville Jaguars offense looked fantastic. Calvin Ridley was effective throughout the afternoon. This Jaguars defense still number 1 in the NFL in takeaways with 20. So they take the football away. They put their offense in short field. Travis Etienne having a fantastic season. We know what Doug Peterson is, what his history is as a head coach in this league, Super Bowl champion with the Philadelphia Eagles. Listen, Jacksonville, it's crazy. Who'd have thought we'd have 2 top 10 AFC South teams, or at least as I see it, and 2 teams that unquestionably are fighting for number 1 for supremacy in that division on Sunday in Houston, Texas. Should be a fantastic matchup between Jacksonville and Houston, these 2 quarterbacks. I said Trevor would be the MVP before the season. That looks to be, albeit as Barry and I talked about, there doesn't look to be a clear front runner in that regard. Trevor maybe could make a late push, but if you think about the Jaguars, this is the part of the season where they got hot last year and made the playoffs. Jacksonville started 6-3. Everybody's like, oh, the sky's falling. Last year they were 3-7, got in and won a playoff game by a 27-0 comeback over the Chargers. I love Jacksonville. I think they're going to continue to get better year after year, and in this case, week after week. The Jaguars are the 7th best team in the National Football League. This is going to be a controversial one. At number 6, despite a win, they drop a spot. It is the Baltimore Ravens. You're like, wait a second, Bryson. Baltimore 6th best team in the NFL. Here's why. Why is Baltimore 6th? Lamar Jackson playing well. Dominated Cincinnati, albeit Joe Burrow didn't play the entire second half, but took care of Cincinnati. Obviously, Bengals scored 20. It was a late touchdown that made the score look a little bit better for the Bengals, but overwhelmingly, their defense has dominated. They're top 2 in the NFL in scoring defense. Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith having fantastic seasons. Lamar Jackson still on the fringe of the MVP discussion. There's no question about that, but again, this is my 2 concerns for the Ravens. I don't trust them in the fourth quarter. I've seen them blown 10 double-digit leads in these games since 2020, so that's a concern. They obviously blew that lead to Cleveland, and the Mark Andrews injury. I know John Harbaugh said he could come back. He could come back at some point this season. That is, I don't know if we recognize how big of an injury that is. The receiving core is better. Odell's playing better. Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers. I like the pieces they have there. Tom Munkin's done a fantastic job as their OC. Mark Andrews is Lamar Jackson's security blanket. That is a huge loss with the ankle injury against the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll see how the Ravens are able to adjust, but I'm telling y'all, that is, I know I think they got the likely kid who's Mark's backup. That's a massive loss. We talk about Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews in that discussion. He's as productive a tight end as there is in the NFL. Big loss for the Ravens. That's why I have them dropping a spot, but they still have incredible upside. They are very much a contender and leading in that brutal AFC North division. The Ravens are the 6th best team in the National Football League. At number 5, moving up a spot from last week, it is the Detroit Lions. The Lions are the 5th best team in the NFL, and here is why. But before I even tell you here's why, I don't think on Monday's show I did the whole soundbite that Dan Campbell does, or that I do for Dan Campbell when the Lions win. Here you go, Dan Campbell.
Kneecap.
Caps were bitten in comeback fashion against the Chicago Bears. So the Lions are playing poorly offensively. Jared Goff throws 3 interceptions. 2 of them were like, what the heck are you doing? You would have thought the linebacker was the intended target on the play. They were so bad. But late game, down 12. Throws a touchdown pass to Jamison Williams. They get a stop on Chicago and Justin Fields. Get the ball back. Drive it quickly down the field. And David Montgomery punches it in for the game-winning touchdown. And Detroit gets to 8-2. Their best start, I think, since 1964. It's either 62 or 64. Early 60s, essentially. It's been a very long time since the Lions have been this good. They are averaging 32 points per game at home. Big matchup tomorrow against the Green Bay Packers. I'll predict that game in just a second. But Detroit is humming offensively. Defensively, they've fallen off a little bit in the last month, so it's a little bit of a concern. But they could score with the best teams in the NFL, and at home, they are darn near unstoppable on the offensive side of the football. The Lions are the 5th best team in the National Football League. At number 4, everybody's panicking on them. Let's hold our horses a little bit. The 4th best team in the NFL is the defending champs. It is the Kansas City Chiefs, and here is why. Like I said to start the show, As rough, I should say, it's bad. They lost the Eagles. As rough of a loss as that was to Philadelphia, all the drop passes, KC leading the NFL in drops, the Mahomes interception, the Kelsey fumble, Andy Reid struggling. This is 3 straight weeks for Kansas City that they have gone scoreless in the second half of games. So a little bit of an adjustment problem potentially for Andy Reid and the Chiefs offensive staff. All of these problems in Kansas City, they are more than capable of fixing. Mahomes the best quarterback in the league. Reid's the best coach in the league. Kelsey's the best tight end in the league. And one could argue the Chiefs very well may have the best defense in the league. Number 3 in the NFL in scoring defense. And facing a Philadelphia offensive line that we all hold in very high regard. They got future Hall of Famers on that line with Kelsey and with Lane Johnson. They've been spectacular this season and for a long time in the NFL. Kansas City, again, as I said earlier, worked them. 4 more sacks than Philadelphia had. Chris Jones had a massive night. Really was the best player in the field, I think, from start to finish in that football game. This is not panic mode. If there's any team that can get their offensive woes fixed, it is the Kansas City Chiefs. I still believe in them, and I think they're the best team in the AFC. I really do. I think they're still the favorites. Vegas would reflect that to get to the Super Bowl, and I believe win the Super Bowl. The Chiefs, though, today are the 4th best team in the National Football League. At number 3, moving up a spot from last week, it is the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas, the 3rd best team in the National Football League, and here's why. Dak Prescott, since that loss to the San Francisco 49ers, has been nothing short of spectacular. I laid out his stats earlier. Pass rating well over 100. He's actually top 3 in the NFL in passer rating. He's number 2 in QBR. He's second in the NFL in completion percentage to Brock Purdy. He's also Pro Football Focus's number 1 ranked quarterback, number 1 highest graded quarterback, rather. That's how they put it for this season. I think he has a grade of about 89, so he's been spectacular. CeeDee Lamb has been nothing short of remarkable as well. Pro Bowl level season last year, got better, improved this season, and is now in the discussion as one of the best receivers in the league with A.J. Brown, with Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, among others. This Cowboys defense, listen, I've got on Micah Parsons at times. I'm like, man, you haven't been quite as impactful as guys like Watt, as guys like Myles Garrett and company. Like, I need to see that type of production. He said, hey, I got you. Multiple sack game against the Carolina Panthers. Dallas took care of business. Obviously, I'll predict their game in just a second tomorrow against the Washington Commanders. But this offense is humming. I think top 2 in the NFL in scoring. Dak's on playing the best football he ever has in his career, squarely in the MVP conversation. CeeDee Lamb's been excellent. I'd like to see them establish a little bit more of a run game, but I love what I'm seeing for their offensive line and pass pro. Love what Dallas is doing right now. I still think they're going to get to the Super Bowl and represent the NFC, but today they are the 3rd best team in the National Football League. At number 2, it is the San Francisco 49ers, up a spot from last week. San Francisco, number 2 in the National Football League, and here's why. They are the Mike Tyson of the National Football League. This is what they do. When they build a lead on you, it is over. Like I said earlier, when San Francisco gets up on you, just chalk it up as an L, move on to next week, go at halftime, don't worry about second half adjustments. Get your game plan ready for your next game, because when San Francisco hits you in the mouth, they take that momentum and they just run you through. That's what they do. Brock Purdy leading the NFL in passer rating, leading in completion percentage. He's been spectacular. Yards per attempt. I mean, Brock Purdy is listen, we get in such a weird discussion with Purdy about is he elite? Is he in the MVP discussion? Well, he's not even the best player on his offense. Yeah, but he's productive. You say, well, Jimmy Garoppolo's productive. The trust that Kyle Shanahan has in Purdy far exceeds the trust that he had in Jimmy Garoppolo. The trust he has in Purdy exceeds what he had in Jimmy Garoppolo. They push the ball down the field more in San Francisco. Brock Purdy, if you look at the advanced stats, is up there is top 10 in the NFL in terms of tight window throws, so he can make the big time throws when he has to. The only knock on this team is they're not great playing from behind, which is a legitimate claim and a legitimate gripe that I have with them. Whether or not they can improve on that, we'll see over the course of the season. But we know the great coach Shanahan is and what Brock Purdy's doing. Christian McCaffrey having a great year. Trent Williams still at this stage of his career the best left tackle in the National Football League. My only concern, as great as this 49ers defense is, talked about the Mark Andrews injury. This one not quite as impactful as the Andrews one, but Talanoa Hufanga done for the season, seasoning, I think it was an ACL, Achilles, lower body injury, but Talanoa Hufanga, who I've raved about for a year on this show. Love him. Gone for the season, which is a brutal loss for the 49ers. Whether or not they'll be able to bounce back in the secondary from a production standpoint remains to be seen. But in terms of the roster, I think it's the best of football. Shanahan's a great coach. Purdy's having a great year. The Niners are the second best team in the National Football League. And that means at number 1 for a second straight week, it is the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles are the best team in the NFL today. And here's why. I mean, look, first of all, not only do they have the best record, but the offensive stats back it up. They're top 10 in virtually every category. Rush yards per game. Jalen Hurts is in the MVP discussion. Their pass offense is incredible. And again, what I love, I don't love the Eagles. Never have, never will. But what I love about how they do things, how they do business in Philadelphia, how they execute games on Sundays, or in this case on Mondays, is, man, when things aren't going, this is to me what separates them from San Francisco. When things aren't going their way, they're able to adjust. They can beat you multiple different ways. If we need to run the football, if we need to throw the football through the air, if we need to have a good defensive performance. It was kind of a mix of all of those things to a certain extent, particularly in the fourth quarter and in the second half in totality against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's a well-coached team with Nick Sirianni. They're great situationally. Jalen Hurts right in the MVP discussion. Today, as we sit here, the Philadelphia Eagles are the best team in the NFL, and I don't love it. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.